Welcome to One Word Stories. My name is Joanna Zell, and I'm really thrilled to welcome a very special guest today, Philippe Rosinski. Philippe is the global leadership developer, an executive coach, a passionate fan of cycling, and has got many stories how he actually works with coaching practices across cultures. He is very well known as the author of Coaching Across Cultures and also the Global Coaching. And it's my tremendous pleasure to welcome you today. Bonjour.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you for joining. Philippe, when you talk about the global coaching, and the global, it's such a big word, what emphasis is actually laid on?
Yes, the word can be a bit misleading because oftentimes when we use the word global, for many people that is the equivalent of international. And here it's much more than that. Global is more about integrated. When I talk about global coaching, I'm talking about an integrated coaching approach, looking at reality from multiple perspectives, ranging from the physical all the way to the spiritual. In fact, I'm looking at 6 perspectives in particular: physical perspective, psychological, managerial, cultural, political, and spiritual. And the idea is to combine those perspectives to have a more powerful approach of coaching, one that is also better suited for the complex environment we live in, where it's not enough to just be an expert in one area. To be able to tackle complex problems, you need to be able to look at these from multiple angles.
From your perspective, what are the most crucial skills for the 21st century when you think of your coaching clients working across cultures?
Well, what are the skills? One, I mean, there are many skills, but what comes to mind is openness, curiosity, flexibility, eagerness to continuously learn. So if you think you know it all, that's not going to be so effective. On the other hand, if you are ready to learn from multiple cultures, to learn from anybody really, from meeting, every encounter is an opportunity to learn. So learning from different cultures, so you can enrich your worldview, you can become a better human being, I would say, and also one who has more flexibility to be able to deal with various situations. So that's, I would say, one important skill, certainly. There are many others, of course.
Yeah. When I listened to your list of these aspects of global coaching, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who also just gets triggered by the word spirituality. Because, of course, when we think of improving skills, and I'm grateful for mentioning right now all the skills for the global leaders, managers, but also employees in general. When we think of spirituality, this is again, it's just a field where people might think, okay, so what is there to be improved?
Yes. Well, spirituality for me is about a deeper connection with self, with others, with the divine, so to speak. You don't need to be religious. Is what is great in us, what is great outside of us. It's an ability to appreciate life, to find meaning and purpose. And spirituality can be informed by different mystical and religious traditions, but also by secular philosophy. And so this allows us to address a number of challenges that human beings face, that leaders face, existential challenges that we face, ethical challenge that we face, questions around meaning and purpose. And so those are some of the aspects that can be addressed from this perspective. Mm-hmm. Typically, when leaders come to a coaching engagement, this is not the type of issues they would bring to the table immediately, but that is something that is below the horizon or below the surface, I may say, it's there. Questions about meaning, purpose typically are there. Ethical dilemmas people face. So I think it's important for a coach to be able to be a partner in those conversations, to learn about philosophy, to learn about what philosophers have to say about sources of wisdom, meaning, purpose, freedom, those sort of questions. It goes beyond just to say, sometimes people equate spirituality to just mindfulness. And that's, of course, very important, to be mindful. But what I'm describing here goes beyond that. It's not just being mindful, although that is very important, but it goes beyond that.
And would you be eager to share a story from the coaching praxis when you said that someone just, struggled a little bit, and that exactly this area with spirituality was helpful?
Yes. Well, an example that comes to mind is a financial director, a CFO, coming to my office. I live south of Brussels. He was struggling with all sorts of issues and so on. And it was becoming a bit confusing for him as well, and for me as the coach as well, to listen to all the difficulties he had to deal with. So I propose we go for a walk. I had not done this before because I don't live very far from the forest. There is a forest in the south of Brussels, Forest de Soignes, and the weather was nice. So we went for a little walk and we went into the forest. And in the forest, he was still talking about all these problems and issues. So I just stopped him. I said, have you noticed the forest here around us? And he said, well, I haven't really paid attention. I was so focused on my problems and issues. So I just stopped him and asked him, I invite you to just have a look at the forest and the trees and the light. And he said, well, that is really nice here. So I invited him to take that in, to appreciate the beauty around him. He hadn't noticed it. And then I did something that is even more unusual, certainly in Belgium. I asked him to touch a tree so he could feel the connection between himself and the tree. And I had a little exercise, a bit unusual for him, but he did it. And the whole thing lasted for about half an hour. After half an hour, we were back into the office. But what happened then, he was much more serene and his thought was much clearer. So that's the spiritual perspective. It's about appreciating what we often take for granted. I call this the sunflower strategy, turning towards the light. And that is inspired by the Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism. I'm not an expert in the Kabbalah, but the Kabbalah means receiving and the act of receiving. And what is meant here is receiving the light. And it may sound like a very esoteric concept, but at the end of the day, it's really about being able to appreciate what we often take for granted. It is unfortunate that sometimes people have to go through hardship to really appreciate things that were in their lives, but that they had not paid attention. Being in good health, being able to have a good conversation with somebody, being able to have good food, to be in a time of peace, and so on and so forth. We may not have achieved all our goals, but how much do we appreciate what we have? This is, by the way, connected to positive psychology. This idea of gratitude will make us happier. So the idea, that you find the connection here with the Kabbalah, you find it in positive psychology and so on. So here's one example to say that, this can be something very practical. I mean, I have many other examples, but that
I love it.
You have one idea, but it's just one idea. There are many other aspects, of course, around spirituality.
Yeah, I love it because it's really going beyond, this understanding of how we can actually support client in the coaching process, especially across cultures, because across cultures, people are getting a little bit tense. Oh, this is a person from, I don't know, another continent, another country. How can I talk about this issue with them if I don't really know this is spiritual path, of a certain individual. And this is also the way how you have just addressed that it's really fantastic to draw the attention really to the surrounding, to the nature, to everything what we can be grateful for, not to focus
this
on the
particular
problem.
example, because
Yeah.
when this I've not done this again. I mean, this was this every coaching is different,
Exactly.
and so this seemed relevant, appropriate at that moment with that person. But in my coaching, many other things happen, and we were just mentioning the cultural perspective. That's a different area. I mean, it's all connected. The cultural perspective, what I propose is something a little bit different than traditional interculturalism, which has been mainly about comparing nationalities. You work with the Chinese, you should do that. You work with the Americans, you should do that. For me, when I talk about culture, I talk about the characteristic of one group that would distinguish this group from another group. And we have multiple cultures. You can be from a certain country, but also from a certain generation, a certain profession, working in a certain organization. So in fact, we all have multiple cultures. And it can become very complicated then. How do we deal with all these groups that we are part of? So one way to deal with this is this model that I've developed, the cultural orientation framework, looks at 17 categories, 17 dimensions of concerning how we manage time, how we communicate, how we organize ourselves, how we think, and just becoming aware of variations that exist in how we engage in all these activities. I've developed a COF assessment tool that can help to measure this, and that can be then the basis of for conversation and for a discussion. Typically, the goal again is not so much to say to put a label on you, but just to have a vocabulary to describe what is your preferred way of thinking, of communicating, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, we don't need to know whether this is due to the fact that you are from that generation, from that country. We just work with what is.
Yeah.
And talking about stories, in fact, I find that what is very powerful is having a combination of stories and the COF assessment. So typically when I would work with a team, for example, we would invite team members to complete that assessment, which then gives them an opportunity to reflect before we even then go on a team retreat together. But also it gives a diagnostic tool to be able to show what is going on individually and in the team. But it's important to also combine this with interviews, which is what I do. I would interview every member individually to get their stories. We are not referring to the tool there. We are just listening to their story, what's going on for them in that team, in that organization. Putting the two together allows us to have the best of both worlds. We have data, and managers like that, and I like that too, I have to say, because it gives a concrete way to be able to describe the situation, a very quick way to describe what is the situation and what can you do about that. You can uncover blind spots that you wouldn't be able to discover if you weren't using a tool like that. So it shows you what some of the blind spots are. And if you have the story that goes with it, then you have a very powerful combination.
Definitely.
Maybe I should give an example to illustrate.
Yes.
So, for example, one team I worked with, and what happened was that one dimension is hierarchy versus equality. Hierarchy, the belief that we are not equals, that society must be stratified to operate effectively. Equality, the idea that we are all essentially equals. The assessment tool measures both the preference, but also the abilities, self-perceived abilities. In that particular team, they preferred equality. They believe that essentially they're all equals. They were also good at equality, according to the survey results, meaning that they were all at ease to participate. They all felt empowered. They were not so at ease with hierarchy, meaning typically that can mean several things, but this could mean, for example, not at ease when somebody just gives me orders and I have to obey, or I may not be at ease giving orders to others, because I believe, we're essentially equal. So who am I to give orders to other people? So we have those data, and you have just one slide where you see all these results. So that's also very quick to grasp for people when they see this graphic results. That's very telling for people when they see that. But the story was that in the interviews, people had told me that the team leader, who had a profile similar to that, was described as a sort of laissez-faire type of leader. He could not intervene, which was for many people a great thing. They loved him. They said, I've never had a better manager. He gives me total freedom. I can do what I want. He's not behind my back. So that's great. But some of the other people on the team said, actually, it's a bit problematic sometimes, because I wish he would give more direction to people. And, because sometimes otherwise we'll have endless conversation, or we won't be sure where we are going. And also when there is a conflict, I wish he would sometimes come in and say, that's the way it's going to be, as opposed to letting that conflict go on and on and on. So I told him that team leader, and once he had the feedback, he was able to he recognized that, and he was able to then tap into this latent part in himself. He had the capacity to also be direct, more directive. He simply didn't see the need for that. He had not awakened that in himself, but now he recognized that sometimes that might be useful. And then sure enough, if I fast forward, now we have a team retreat, and during that team retreat, there is at some point a discussion between team members. So typically I try to reconcile the different viewpoints, but in this case, I realized I was not going to be able to do that. It would either have to be this or that. So I turned to the team leader and I asked him, what is your decision? He said, that's my decision. And even the most rebellious person in the group didn't say anything. That was the end of the conversation. That was very unusual for the team. How was that possible? I think it was the combination of having those stories, but also the COF assessment, because people were not aware of the pitfalls of just having equality. They saw the merits of having some hierarchy in that as well. Once they recognized that, they were ready to take his lead, and he was also ready to take the lead in a more forceful, directive fashion. This is one example, but I could give many examples just to illustrate how I think this combination of having data, which managers like, and which allows to have just a picture of what is the situation, combined with stories, is a powerful combination.
I love it because when we work with people with values, and also with this dimensions or orientations, however we call it, and we draw their attention to these pitfalls of extremes, just with, let's say, the value square, that we say there is something positive about hierarchies, but also something negative about it. Exactly the same with equality, that there is something very, very positive. However, there are also some negative aspects, and that one has to take into consideration both, like yin yang, and also having the white with the black dot, and just the opposite. We still remain at this abstract level, that people would relate to it, they would understand it at the cognitive level. Yes, you are right. Yes, sure. However, when you work with them through their own experience, when you share this invitation to, just tell their stories, this is exactly when it gets tangible.
Yes, of course, absolutely. So we do, I just gave a quick example with a team, but also with individuals. Typically in individual coaching, people would have the CF report, I tell them the results don't matter per se. What matters is the conversation, or to use your expression, would be the story that goes with it. So the what the COF cultural orientation framework allows us to do is to probably explore areas that we would not have explored otherwise. That's often what people tell me. So it gives us a systematic way to approach different aspects. And then we need, this is an opportunity for people to express what could that mean, those results mean for you. So this is an invitation to get their stories and for them to then connect the dots and to see, hey, where they may be effective, but also what could be the developmental opportunities for them.
Yes, definitely, definitely, because this is exactly this power of combining both. Yeah, you are very, very right with your yes observation that when we work only with data and facts or only with stories, that it's pretty challenging for many, many people, and that it's not satisfactory. It's not enough. When we combine the superpowers, then this is the moment where magic happens. And we can actually also dive deeper, just like you have said at the beginning of our conversation, also to talk about psychological safety, about the physical aspects, and also political aspects and the spiritual aspects.
Maybe just something to, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jonah. I just want to echo the word "and" is very important for me. It's about combining, even leveraging different perspectives. So also the way I use cultural differences is not just more of one, less of the other. It's even beyond the yin and yang. It's about, it's beyond a zero-sum game. It's a positive sum game. More of one means more of the other. And I don't know if, do you have the time for me to share a quick example with that? One of the dimensions, in fact, the first one is control versus humility.
Yeah.
Control, I'm in charge of my destiny. Humility, accepting limitations, and appreciating that the power is outside of me. Paradoxically, it's when I let go, when I appreciate that the power is outside of me, that I can regain greater control. I can achieve success, not just success at all costs, but success in a more sustainable fashion. I would need more time to explain what I mean here, but it's very much about these paradoxes. More humility doesn't mean less control. In fact, it can be the opposite. Not always possible, but that has been the idea with coaching across culture. It's about leveraging differences, achieving unity in diversity, a form of synthesis of differences.
Yeah, this is actually also the moment when we understand much, much better this acronym for the term team. Yes, that together everyone achieves more. That it's only not only in terms of the team as the group of people, but also, yes, just in general at the societal level.
Yes.
And it's so much about really this understanding for the different approaches, not only at the cognitive level, but also at this emotional level, so that we can really relate to it. And we can, as you say, go beyond that. It's not so much about just this 0, 1 sum, but much
yes,
more sophisticated.
Yes. And teams, achieving this synergy is far from automatic for teams, as you know. So I think that's where intercultural team coaching can help to ensure we are able to leverage the diversity that is in the team, and that we can have this synergy, the 1 + 1 = 3, if you'd like, which won't happen automatically.
Yeah. But you have also just emphasized this idea that there is this difference between control and also, yes, let's say this humble approach. What the last years actually taught all of us was more of this humble approach, that we are not really in control. We cannot really control everything. And it's good like that people had to also let go different habits, different expectations, and so on and so forth. And this guides me to the question, what was actually such a powerful word for you that helped you in this tricky times of pandemics, and what is the story behind?
What harmed me during the pandemic? Yes, well, I think the pandemic was in a way an opportunity for me to do certain things that I had not done before. For example, I have a 3-day seminar on leading and coaching across cultures that have had the chance to deliver in many parts of the world with different partners. And several people had asked me to do this online. And I have to say, I was a bit resistant to do that. I like to meet people face to face. And the pandemic in a way forced me to do it. And I was impressed by how much can be achieved. So I've had the chance to do now several versions of this. We have done it over sometimes just 3 days in a row, but sometimes over a longer period, 6 half days. And I'm amazed at how powerful this can be, the possibilities that exist, and we don't have to travel even. I even did it, so I've done it in English, but I even did it in Russian with simultaneous translation just before the war broke out. I had a group of Russians and Ukrainians together, in fact, in this seminar. I was speaking English and there was somebody doing simultaneous translation, interpreting, and that worked just well. I was coaching somebody speaking English, the person answering, responding in Russian. So many possibilities. What I've done also is I've taken a number of online courses during this period. One, for example, about social psychology was very inspiring for me. One about the science of exercise, also interesting. More recently, something about philosophical ethics, also machine learning, in a variety of domains. I continue to be curious to learn from different disciplines, of course, in neuroscience as well. So I'm certainly not an expert, neither in machine learning nor in neuroscience, but I was interested in getting to know a bit more about the subject. I had a chance to do some programming for the machine learning course, something I hadn't done in years. But just to go to have a clearer sense of what are the possibilities there. What is this when we talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning? What is behind that? Same thing with neuroscience, having at least some sense of what is it, what is this? Because I hear many coaches talking about neuroscience, and they refer to neuroscience research. In fact, they don't know anything about neuroscience, and what they talk about is something we knew already anyway. So I realized that there is so much more to be learned, and I'm definitely not an expert, but I wanted to have a clearer sense. So I've used this period to continue to learn. I've done some writing as well, some physical exercise as well, and life has continued.
Yeah. So what would be such a word that actually gives the summary of this, what you have just said? This one word.
Curiosity and lifelong learning. And maybe wanting to bring at my own modest level a contribution to help at my level promote a better world. And that's what I'm trying to do also through this work. I think there is a need to promote more unity and diversity. There is a need for more sustainable development. And that's what I try to promote in my work as well.
Yeah. Philippe, and this message comes across whenever I also read your posts or your articles or whatever you are writing. This message definitely comes across, that you are one of these leading coaches who says, yes, we need more of this inclusion and unity in diversity to appreciate. And yes, with this, I would like to also express my words of gratitude that you have found time and energy to join the series. And thank you very, very much for your generous sharing, and wish you all the best with all your projects.
I wish you also all the best, Joanna. Thank you very much for your interest in my work and for your invitation. All the best to you and to all our viewers.